Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of the BVW Photon tutorial series. So right now, what we are going to do is look at the setup of matchmaking. How do we create a room? How do we join a room? And what is it that we need to do before the game starts? Now, the way I have done this is that there's a demo that is by default provided by Photon, which is called Demo Asteroids. And I am going to write some of the matchmaking code in front of you in this tutorial. Now, this is not all of the code. All of the code is quite large and it is hard to explain in a short video. And it's much better if you go over to the documentation website and read this. Um, but yeah, I have tried to cover as many points as I think is important. Another thing to realize here is that you are not going to learn everything that I show you. And that's because this is the first time you're seeing this, and some of these concepts can be a little hard. But what I do want you to know that there's a lot of documentation available. Photon has a very, very nicely documented website. There's a lot of tutorials available on YouTube that talk about how you can use Photon. So definitely check those out. Um, this is how we all learn. The first time that I used Photon, I also went over to the documentation website and I had to read a lot. So that's something you need to be prepared to do. And with that being said, we can start. So to show you where the demo is, I go over to the Photon folder, which is here because I imported it from the package manager. So I open Photon. I go to Photon Unity Networking. I go to demos, and there it is, demo asteroids. Uh, there are other demos as well that I encourage you to check out. But what we are going to be looking at is demo asteroids. So after opening that, I see that there's a scenes folder. What we are going to be doing today is something to do with the lobby scene. Now, this may be a little different from what you see on your computer after you implement or after you import Photon, and this is because I have tried to write the code for this on my own in the video that follows. Um, but yeah, that's because it's not possible to include all of the code. There are a lot of things, but I've tried to pick out things that are what I would think important. Now, let me just show you how the end product looks like. So I play. It gives me a random name. I can also write my own name. I can log in. So now I've logged into the Photon cloud. I can create a room or join random room. This video is much more focused towards creating a room because joining rooms is quite simple using Photon. So create room. I can create a room called room 1. Max players can be 10. And then I create the room. Now I am in a waiting area. I can click that I'm ready and I can start the game. So once the game starts, um, I have this spaceship that I control, and that's basically what this entire game is about. So right now, I am the only one who's making this video, so I can't show you two people in the same room. But yeah, you've just got to believe me that it's possible, and I'm going to show you how that code works. So this is what the game is like. Okay, so let's talk about the general idea of what we are trying to do here. So when you have a multiplayer game, you can't directly start playing the game. Like there's a bunch of stuff that needs to happen. You need to connect to the server. You need to get everybody in the same room, and then you can start playing. So let's look at this. So you start the game. This is the first step, and this corresponds to like pressing the play button in Unity or like playing the game from a build. Um, so the first thing that you need to do after you start the game is to connect to Photon Cloud. So remember, there are two ways you can use Photon. The first one is Photon Server, where you connect to uh, an on-premise server or like someone's computer directly, or which is the more recommended option, which is connect to Photon Cloud. So this is the login phase. In our code, you'll see that we use the term login. So when we say login, it means connecting to the Photon cloud. Once you have connected to the Photon cloud, you need to either create a room or you need to join a room. So a room is a place where people who are going to be in the same game instance are going to connect, get together, and then start playing. So you can think about this as the like if you've played Among Us, then the room that everybody gets together in first before the spaceship actually launches. That's what a room is basically, and you sort of need to do that. Fortunately for us, Photon makes creating and joining rooms extremely easy from a developer's perspective. So you don't have to worry about it being complicated. It's not really complicated, but yeah, there's like this step that you need to do before you can actually play the game. Once you have created or you have joined a room, you need to wait for others to join. Like this is a step because there's you aren't the only player. There are other people that you want to play with. Obviously, that's why you're making a multiplayer game. So yeah, you need to wait for other people to join, and then when everybody is in, everyone's ready, everyone's connected, then you can start playing. So in this part of the tutorial, we are going to have a look at how to implement this. In my opinion, this is a little this although Photon makes everything easy, this needs some sort of an introduction because this is not something that you may have done before. Um, so yeah, if you get this part right, then the actual playing of the game or like developing the actual game is going to be less challenging. Um, so this is the game flow. Now, in order to implement this, there are like two things that you need to add, or like there are like two things that you need to program. The first thing are actions. So actions are like directly doing what's written over here. So it's like connect to Photon Cloud. So if you use this function, Photon Network dot connect using settings, you can connect to Photon Cloud. So this is like it's like it's not a scientific term, but I'm calling it action. Um, so yeah, so connect to Photon Cloud. You use this function to do that. Next, you want to create or join a room. There are like these functions that you can use. So there's a function called Photon Network dot create room, and you pass in some arguments. We'll look at what you have to pass in. But yeah, here I'm just giving an introduction. So create room, join random room. So this may not be applicable for you because the scope of the game is not going to be very big. But let's say that you are developing a game that is going to be played by 10,000 players. Then joining random rooms is quite helpful. Um, Join lobby. Okay, so a lobby is basically something that comes before rooms. So it's like you generally join a lobby. The lobby then contains a list of rooms, and you join one of the rooms. Um, this is something that is that is like Photon's definition of doing things. Like this is not something that's standard everywhere. This can change if you use some other clients, but yeah, in Photon you need to join a lobby. Fortunately, you can just use this function as it is, join lobby with nothing, no arguments. It will default to the default arguments, and you can still join a lobby, and that there won't be much of an issue. So don't worry too much about joining a lobby. As long as you just don't pass in any arguments, it's fine. And at the last, you have a Photon Network dot join room, which is some if your friend has already created a room, then you can join a room using this function. Um, and then we have Photon Network dot load level. This is so that if the master changes the currently active scene, then that gets reflected across all the clients that are connected to the master. So it's like scene switching becomes very easy using Photon. Like you don't need to manually trigger scene changes in every client. You just need to call this function on the master, and all of the clients will automatically change scenes. So these are the actions that you need to do. Of course, this load level is tied to start play. So yeah, that's why it's at the bottom. Okay, so now we come to callbacks. What are callbacks? Callbacks is or like callbacks are something or functions that you will call when your action is complete. So let's say that you have logged in, you have connected to the Photon cloud, then this function gets called. Now, to give you a little bit of a background, the way this works is that instead of inheriting from mono behavior, like most of your classes that you use in Unity inherit from just mono behavior. So instead of inheriting from mono behavior, you instead inherit from mono behavior Pane callbacks. Uh, this class is implemented by Photon, and it is an extended class of mono behavior. So by extended class, I mean that it has all the functionality of mono behavior and a little bit more, especially for Photon networking. So you won't have access to these classes unless you inherit from mono behavior Pane callbacks. So only classes that inherit from mono behavior Pane callbacks can override these methods is the best way to put it. And we are going to look at all of this in code. So this will become much clearer, but yeah, this is something that you need to know, that mono behavior Pane callbacks should be your uh, should take place of mono behavior in your file that is implementing all of this. Okay, so on connected to master, this gets triggered after you have connected to the Photon cloud. Um, so you can add some functionality in here in this function that you want to call after a player has connected. On join room, this is something that gets called when you either use create room or join room. From Photon's perspective, it doesn't really matter whether you are creating a room or joining room. It calls the same function, which is on join room. And then there are like a few functions that you may or may not use. This is to handle joining failure. So it's like if you try to create a room and you failed, then you can call this. If you try to join a room, failed, you can call this. Random join, you try to join a random room and failed, you can call this. So these are functions that get triggered. Uh, yeah, when you either join a room or you fail to create join a room. And then we have a few functions uh, that are supposed to be used when you are waiting for other players to join. So these functions are we'll look at some of these functions, not all of them, but this is on player entered room. So let's say that you are waiting and another player entered the room, so you can pass in some functionality over here that gives some indication that another player has joined the room. On player left room, so one of the players that are in your room left, you can give some indication that someone left. On master client switched. Now this is something that is again, like if you are making a quick game in 2 weeks, I'm not sure if you really need to do this, but just for exposure, on master client switch basically means that if the the master client or the person who created the room is for some reason leaves, then the master client will switch. And if that happens, then you can like pass in some functionality over here. And At the end, we have on player properties updated. This is a unique situation in cases where, let's say that player changed his name, or there are like some custom properties that get changed on the player. You can use that. But yeah, these are all functions that are important while you are waiting for others to join. So they're useful in this phase. So now that you have a picture of like a high level view of this, let's go into the code. Um, so before that, let me just show you what we are trying to do here. So we have a scene here that has this beautiful uh, UI that Photon made for one of their demos, and I'm just going to use that because I think this is a very well made demo. So we are going to add. So think about this as the functionality we are going to write, but the UI is already in place. So what do we have here? We have a top panel. The top panel has this connection status, um, and then it has a bunch of logos. So that's fine. Then we have the login pane. Um, in the login pane, so this login pane, if you remember, applies to the first step, which is you have to connect to the Photon server. So that's what this is for. You can add a name over here. Then there's the selection panel. This basically applies to the second part of it, which is you create a room or you join a room. So you can create a room by clicking on this button. You can click on showroom list to see a list of rooms, and then you can join one of those rooms. Uh, we have a create room panel. So in here you have a room name and max players. So you can configure this as the way you like it, and then you can create room. Max players, I think Photon has a limitation of 16 players. I'm actually not completely sure about that. But yeah, I think it's 16 players. So don't make it more than 16 to be safe. Then we have trying to join a random room. So this is just like a placeholder when you are joining a random room. So while there's like you're taking some time to search and join a random room, this panel is going to show. Then we have a room list. So yeah, you'll see like some rooms that come up over here when you are trying to join a specific room created by your friend. So you can see a list of rooms over here. So room list panel, and then inside room panel. So over here you'll see a list of players that are like in your room. So yeah, this is basically the UI. Let me just show that to you once again. So inside room panel, room list panel, join a particular, or sorry, this create room panel. This is the create or join, like select which one you want to do. And yeah, this is the login panel. Apart from that, we have some prefabs. The important one is the room list entry and player list entry. So room list entry basically has some actually I'm not 100% sure why, but the text is not visible over here. Like I can change this. I saw this before, but it's like maybe I have to zoom in or zoom out. I'm not sure. But yeah, this has a text property for room name, room players, and there's a join room button. So yeah, this will be a entry in the room list, and then we have a player list entry. So yeah, so we have a player image, we have some player names, we have player ready button. I'm sorry guys that this display is not showing much, but yeah, you can see here that there are like these properties. And yeah, we have a player ready image. This is like, of course, if the player is ready, then this image will pop up. So yeah, these are the UI elements that we had. Yeah, okay. So let's get into the meat of things, which is the code. Let me just delete that. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of these game objects. These are basically just references to the panels that we just saw. Um, and what we are going to do now is to add functionality for these panels. So I guess the first thing, and at the bottom, if you're curious about what's at the bottom, there's like just some default functions like set active pane, and don't worry too much about the caching of rooms and updating room list view. This is I'm sure like you already know how to do these things. I'm not going to go into this. I'm just going to look at the networking part. Okay, so let's start with the awake function. What we want to do during awake is make sure that we enable automatically sync scene. So I go to Photon network, automatically sync scene, true. So what this does is that for everyone in the room who have already joined the room, if the master client switches the scene using photon.load level, the function that we saw, if the master client does that, then everybody else automatically has their scene changed. So this is to maintain the same scene on all the clients. Um, then we have a room. So then we have like this dictionary of room list entries. I'm just going to initialize that to be like an empty dictionary. Yeah. Okay, and I am going to make the player name input field, sorry, not the player name input field, player name input text to player and then some random value between, let's say, 1 to 100. Okay, so player name input is basically a text field in the login panel, so it's this text thing. Don't worry too much about the error right now. Yeah, it's the text field. So I'm populating that as soon as I awake. Okay, so what I'm looking to do now is to program the actions. So the actions, if you remember, are these functions. So basically, we have a bunch of UI. Let's, for example, the login button, which is what we'll start with. And the idea is to add the functionality to these buttons. Okay. So the first thing that we have is the login button. So we have on login button clicked. I don't think we need any arguments. So we are getting the player name first. This is the text field. We want to check if the player name is not invalid. So it should not be a blank string. If you don't want to use the equals function, that's fine. You can also do equals to equals to. So if it is not blank, then we are first going to add a nickname. Let me just type this out and then I'll explain. The next thing is we want to connect using setting, which is the function that we talked about earlier. So it's like if you do photon network.local player, that basically means that you are referring to the local player that is on this computer or like on this client. For each client, of course, there's only one local player. So, and that would be the player that is on that client. So this is how you refer to the player class of the local player. And then you have nickname, which is what you see over here. So it's like this can be non-unique, as you see over here. So this is like just a name. Player name for us is what comes from here. And don't worry about this error. So player name comes from here. And yeah, that need not be unique. So once we have the player name, then we are going to connect using settings. These settings, by the way, are the settings that you originally put into the Photon settings uh, prefab. Is that a prefab? Yeah, I think it's a prefab. Okay. Else, we want to log an error. So what we need to do now is come up with the create room function. Um, so that is this part. Um, and we are going to use the photon network.create room. In Unity, if I enable the create room panel, you see that there's a room name and max player. So these are the input fields that we are working with, and then we have the create room. So we need to create a function for the create room button. Okay. So let's call this function on create room button clicked. The first thing that we have is room name. We already have the input field for that, so you can just get the text. We want to make sure if room name is not equal to 1, is not equal to a blank string, so we are just going to make it a random name if it's equal to a blank string. Let's call that room. One comma 100. I think that's fine. Okay. Next, we have the max players. So the max players actually needs to be a byte. So that's a little problematic, but not too much. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use this byte.try parse. We get the string value, and then we use the out keyword, and that populates the max players. Another thing that we can do here actually is clamp it so that the max players is not too high. So mathf.clamp max players. Let's say we want a minimum of 2 and maximum of 16. So we clamp it there. Next we have the room options. Now here's a documentation for the room options class. So the reason we need room options is because this function, the photon network.create room function, takes in the room options as an argument. So we need to create a room options variable. The important thing here is to pass in the max players and player time to live. So time to live basically means that if a client disconnects, this actor is inactive first and then removed after a timeout. And the duration of this timeout is determined by time to live. So if let's say that we don't we just do something like this, room options, sorry, options. This is just going to create a default room options. But we can give the max players because we already have that. So what we do is this max players. You don't need to set any of these other values. They have a default value which should be fine. If your game needs something specially to do with these things, then you can change that. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. Just to give you an example, I am going to set the player time to live to, let's say, 10,000. I think this is in milliseconds, so that's like 10 seconds. And then I call the function create room. I pass in the room name. So you see it's asking for room name, room options, and a typed lobby. So room name, options, and for the type lobby, I'm just going to pass in null because the default lobby is fine for us. And that's the create room function. Okay, so now we are coming to the join room part. Joining a room is much easier actually. There are two ways to do this. One is that you join a random room, or if your friend has created a room and you want to join the same room, then you need to have the same room name. So this variable that you passed in while creating a room, you can pass the same string while joining a room, and you will join the same room as your friend. Right now, what I'm going to do is just implement on join random room. But what you can do is implement in your own game joining a specific room. You just have to pass in the same room name. So your friend can tell you the room name, and then you can pass that in. Okay, so uh, just to show you how this can be done. So on join room, I'm going to do the random one. So that's what I'm calling my function. I'm going to call set active panel, join random room panel, and photon network dot join random room. Let's say that you wanted to, oh, I need to pass the name. Let's say that you wanted to do the specific room. Then what you would do is photon network dot join room, and then you would pass in the room string over here. So if it was room 1, then you can just do this and you'll join the same room. So this needs to be communicated verbally, or you can even show a list. I think there's a function called get custom room list. If you can use this to get a list of rooms in the lobby that you are in. But yeah, this is joining a room, super easy. To quickly check our progress over here, let's have a look at the flow. So I start, it nicely generates a random name for me. I click on login. Okay, so what's happening is that this is not changing. The panel is not changing, and this is because I implemented the login function, but I did not implement the callback. So I need something to happen after the login has successfully executed. So that is where the callback comes in. So to give you, to tie this in together, we need to implement this on connected to master in order to uh, bring everything together. Okay, so I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to do public override void on connected to master. Okay, so the reason I'm doing override over here is because on connected to master is a function that has been implemented in mono behavior PUN callbacks. So I told you that you need to implement so you need to inherit from mono behavior pun callbacks if you want to use any of these callback functions, because the base functions have been implemented in this class. And this class, mono behavior pun callbacks, of course, is a extended class of mono behavior. Okay. I can get rid of the base, not that big of a deal. So what I want to happen is after I click the login button, the panel changes to and goes to the selection panel. So I need to be able to um, go here. So what I do is that I just type this dot set active panel. Set active panel is a function that has been implemented already. It's not that difficult. You are just setting a panel by passing in its name. So selection panel dot name, and that's that. Um, Let me think. Yeah, I think this is it. So let's go back. Random name, login. Okay, it's still not switching. No, I did not save. Okay, and now it switches. Okay, so the next part is to create a room. Let's see if this is working correctly. So I type in the room name, max players can be 16, create room. Okay, so the pane is not shifting, and this is because, again, I've not implemented the callback over here. And if you remember, what we need to do now is implement the on joined room. This is because create room and join room both use the same callback, which is on joined room. So no matter which one you use over here, create room or join room, you will use the on joined room callback. So let's go ahead and implement that. Actually, there's no need for a comment. So public override void on joined room. We can delete the base. Okay, so let's think about what we need to happen over here. Uh, the first thing is that we need to join the room and switch the pane. So we can activate a panel. That is not very difficult. The next thing is that we need to get data of players that are already in the room and display it. Uh, this display is not necessary, but it's nice to have it. Um, and what I'm using over here is something called a player list entry prefab, and a component called player list entry. Um, don't worry too much about how these have been implemented. That does not matter. Just focus on how I am manipulating the networking data. So the first thing that I do is set active panel, and this would be the inside room panel. Okay. Um, we have a dictionary called player list entries that we have not instantiated. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Next, what I want to do is that after joining the room, I can get a list of all the players that are in the room. I want to loop over these players, and I want to get some information from them. So let's see how I can do that. For each player, which is the class of the player, photon network.player list is what I'm using. So photon network.playerList basically just gives you a list of the players in the current room. Yeah. So we have the player list over here, which is a property of the photon network class, and it returns a sorted copy of the player list in the current room. So we can use that to get all the players in the room. Game object, entry. So this is the part that you need not worry too much about, even if you don't understand it, because what I'm essentially doing is just filling in data into a data structure that I've created. Not too exciting. Okay, so this part is actually important. What I'm doing is that I'm initializing this component uh, through a function called initialize, which is written. It's not a default function, and then I pass in the p.actor number. So if you remember, players have uh, an actor number property. So I am passing that in and the nickname, which is also a property that players have. Nickname. Okay, so let's say over here that I want to. Um, so there's an option that allows players to tick when they are ready. And in this game, the asteroids game that has been created by Photon, they do have that option. So let's say I want to implement that over here. So I create an object. What is this object going to do? It will become clear in a second. So I'm going to use the custom properties. Try get value asteroids game player ready. This is a constant that they have set when they were implementing this game, and I'm going to use that. So basically what I'm doing here is that I'm passing in a key in this hash table using the function try get value. If this key is not found in this hash table, then this entire boolean will turn false, and if this key is found, then the value is going to go into this object over here. Is player ready? So another thing that you should know over here is that this custom properties, this has been set. This has been set by them. So custom properties is an empty hash table. You can put in any value that you want. Asteroids game.player ready was something that when they were creating the game, they added that as a custom property for each player. Entry dot get component player list entry set player ready, convert the object to a boolean is player ready, and then I can add to my dictionary key.actor number. So I'm using the actor number as a key and then the entry as the value. Okay, so let's check our status now. Login, create room 1. Okay, yeah, this looks pretty good because now we see ourselves. So this is us, and this is the player entry list that I was telling you guys about. And I can click on ready, and it's going to show an indication over here that I'm ready. And if there were more people in the room, then they can also communicate that they are ready by clicking this button. So the last part now, of course, is to actually start the game. And as you see, that part is not working. So that's what we need to do next. The next thing that we need to do now is to make sure that we can start the game by pressing the start game button. So I'm just going to create a function called on start game button click. Okay, and in here there are two things that we need to do before we actually start the game. We need to make our room closed so that people cannot join the room after we have started the game. And then we need to make our room invisible to people who want to join random games or like who want to get a room list in the lobby. So the way we do this is photon network dot current room dot is open equals to false, and photon network dot current room dot is visible equals to false. Okay, and once we have done that, now we can use the load level. So just so that you guys remember, to start play, we are going to use this function, photon network dot load level and then scene name. So let's quickly type that out, load level, and then we put in the name of the scene, whatever that may be. In my case, that is demo asteroids game scene. Let's quickly check if that works. Login, create room 1, 16, create room, player 69, I'm ready, start game. Oh, okay, I've not added the scene to the build settings, so let me quickly do that. Demo asteroid scene, and this is the scene that I need to add. Okay, let's check now. Create room 1, 16, start game. Okay, so our game can now start, and we can move around. But right now I'm the only one. Theoretically, because of the functionality that we have created, other people can also join. All right, so that was the matchmaking part. We saw a lot of different stuff. I definitely encourage you to check out the documentation itself and a tutorial on YouTube, for which I've put the link in the description of this YouTube video. And see you in part 3, where we'll discuss the gameplay.